here. The only request I have, because I know you guys have given me your full attention week after week, we've had incredible discussions, so I know that it's all possible. If you find you need a minute break because either something's funny or you just need to go get a drink, just do it, because what she has to say is something that deserves your full attention and respect. So I'm gonna sit down and enjoy just like the rest of you.
Hi, I'm Marsha Shapiro. I have been a teacher for 40 years. I've taught everything from kindergarten to graduate school. So the first thing I want to do is I introduce myself. I live in Rivervale, New Jersey. I was a wife, a mother, now I'm a grandmother, but what I'm most going to be talking to you about today is being the daughter of Holocaust survivors. So with that being said, I want you to respectfully go around the room and tell me your name and where you're from.
I'm Kobe. I'm from around here.
Okay.
I'm Evan. I'm also kind of around here.
But
I'm Carter and I live in Montville, New Jersey.
okay.
I'm Simon and I also live in Montville, New Jersey.
I'm Ravi and I was born in the city, but now I live like a mile from here.
Great.
Nate's our aide, but
My name is Nathan and I'm from Nanuet.
Okay.
I'm Sharon, and I actually was born in the Bronx for the first 5 years, but I also lived in Nanuet for a very long time. I now live in Nyack.
My name is Derek, and I'm from Sloatsburg, New York.
Okay. Far away.
Olivia and I'm from South
Okay. So, what do you know about Kristallnacht? Does someone want to have any idea? Yes.
Isn't it the night of the broken glass where the Nazis came and destroyed all the Jewish stores, broke the windows and stuff and looted the place?
Well said. Anybody have anything to add to what he said? Okay. Hi. My mother was a 16-year-old girl living in Frankfurt, Germany at that time. She went to yeshiva. She went to an all-girls yeshiva, and the building that she described was a huge building where the girls went on one side and the boys went on the other side.
Yeshiva, guys, is a Jewish day school,
Yeah.
so it was all women. Just
They
so
were Orthodox. They were very, very Orthodox. And she grew up very happy in the same building with her grandparents, and she got a great education, and she thought life was going to be good and she'd stay in Germany and get married and have a family. But the Nazis had a very different idea of what was going to happen. It started in 1935. My grandfather Jacob, who my grandson is named after, got fired from his job. Now, why would he get fired?
Because he was Jewish.
Correct. And he worked for a newspaper. So the newspaper was like a sports newspaper, kind of like Sports Illustrated, but it got published weekly, and they helped him come to America. So he went from being an educated person working on a newspaper, and he came to America, and he became a salad chef in a German restaurant.
Ooh.
Right? So my mother and my uncle and my grandmother got left behind with the grandmother. And then along came Kristallnacht. They were living in a building, like a brownstone building with lots of different apartments. And in those days, they had a caretaker of the building, and her name was Frau Schultz. Frau Schultz was not Jewish, but she knew all the residents in the building because most of them were Jewish, and she had a very good relationship with them. And along came Kristallnacht, and they had no idea this was coming. And my mother said all she heard was glass spattering and boots coming up the stairs, and they were told to hide in the root cellar. And then the Nazis came to the door, and Frau Schultz answered the door. And the Nazis said to Frau Schultz, "Where are the dirty Jews?" And Frau Schultz said, "There are no dirty Jews here." So nothing happened to my family because she was brave enough to say that there was no Jews living in the building. And that night, they really weren't really looking for children. They took away mostly men and boys of working age. So they were saved. And then Farshel said to my mother, come into the basement, I have something to tell you. And that was, you need to leave. You can't stay here, it's not safe. There are trains at the station waiting to take you away. And where were those trains gonna go? Does anybody know?
America.
The camps, right. So, my grandfather quickly got them the visas and the things that they needed to get, and they went on a ship. And my mother came here on her 17th birthday, on May 24th, 1939. And she met my grandfather, and they went to live together. But my mother couldn't come here and be a kid because she just couldn't. They sent her off to be a nanny with a family, with an Orthodox family. She said she took care of these horrible 3 boys who were horrible, but because they had no place for her. So that's what she did. And eventually, she met my father here, and they got married. And guess who was born? First, I had an older brother, and then I came along. We lived in a place called Washington Heights. Anybody ever heard of it? It's still there. Yeah, you've heard of it? What have you heard?
I'm just saying.
Okay, anybody hear anything? Yeah?
In
In the Heights. Well, okay. Well, Lin-Manuel Miranda did do a show about Washington Heights, but it was mostly about Hispanic people. But where I grew up, it was 20,000 refugees. Now, what's a refugee? Ah, yes,
Isn't it somebody that came from another country to like be safe?
exactly. So 20,000 German, mostly German and Austrian Jews came to live together. And that's how I grew up. Everybody where I grew up was Jewish, the whole neighborhood. It was like a shtetl. You know what a shtetl? A shtetl is like a little village. It's like a little village, people all protected each other. There was a kosher butcher, there was a kosher bakery, and there was a shul on every corner. And that's how I grew up. But I'm going to tell you a little interesting story about that. So that's a happy story, right? That's a happy story. That's my mother's side of the story was a happy story, right? Because I'm here and I have grandchildren and we're all going to remember all the people that came. But my father's story was not so happy. He was born in a little town called Hanau, which is outside of Hanau, which doesn't exist anymore. And his family had a kosher butcher business. And my grandfather died before the war. So his mother was Paula, and she lived with three brothers. My father was the oldest, and they had 2 other brothers, Max and Freddie. And along came the war, and they were not allowed to keep their business or their horses or their house. And my father and his oldest brother was conscripted. That's a fun word you may not know. You know what conscripted means? It's kind of like a draft. They were drafted to go to a concentration camp called Buchenwald. Buchenwald, what people really don't know is they took young Jewish men and they said, okay, we're gonna build a concentration camp. So that's what they had to do. They had to go there and work. So he was there for months on end. And I'm really not sure of the whole story, but a miracle happened. They had relatives in England who worked for Hayes, the Hebrew worked for Hayes, and I think they probably paid off, my personal opinion, they paid off the Nazis to let my father and my uncle go. So they went home to their mother, whose name was Paula, and said, we have 24 hours to leave the country. We can go to the Isle of Man in England, and you could come with us. And she said, I can't go, because she had her mother who was all alone, and her mother had no other sisters or brothers because they were gone. So she stayed. So my father and his brother Max went to the Isle of Man, where when they got there, they were listed as German spies, of all things. What? Yes, German alien spies. And I just found this out recently because I had a cousin in Canada who did research and found paperwork that they were listed as spies, which was really ironic. Yes.
How old was your father and his brother when they fled from Germany? About.
Stephen was born in 18 and he came in 39.
So about 21.
21?
He was 21. He was too old for the kinder transport.
Okay.
His youngest, my youngest uncle came with
Kinder
the kinder
transport.
transport. So they went there and they
Do
couldn't.
you guys know what kinder transport is?
No.
Kinder transport is, it's also through Hayes and other Jewish organizations that arrange for children to get out of Germany and get transported to a safe place. It's called the kinder
Without
transport.
their parents.
Without their parents?
Without their parents.
Correct.
So my youngest uncle, he was 12 at the time. He went, I think he was 12 or 14. He went on the kinder transport and ended up a couple of years later being in the U.S. Army, and he became a cook in the U.S. Army. And when he got out of the Army, he became a very big kosher caterer cook, and he cooked for Begin at one point at the Waldorf. It's a crazy story, but that's how. So my father was there with his brother, and they said, "Where are we gonna go? We can't stay here." They weren't allowed to work. They had a visa for a very short period of time. Where are we gonna go? So they contacted an aunt who lived who's here already, an old aunt, Tanta Rosa. I still remember her. To me, she was always like 90, but she probably wasn't at the time. And she said, "Okay, I have paperwork for one of you, not both of you." So, because my father was the oldest, they said, "You're gonna come to America." So they left my Uncle Max sitting in the Isle of Man where he couldn't work and they couldn't afford to feed him. So he signed up to go to Saskatchewan. Anybody have an idea? Anybody good in geography? Where's Saskatchewan? It's not in America. North. Think. Yes.
Canada?
Right. Saskatchewan was a very cold and desolate place, and that's where he went. And he signed up, to work on a farm, which he really didn't like. So he ran away and went to Toronto, where he met my aunt. So he came with nothing and nobody, and he married my aunt. He had 4 children, and now I have like 40 relatives of 3-4 generations living in Canada. So that's a very nice thing too. So getting back to, my father came here, and he was working in a cleaning store. And my grandmother at the time said to my mother, "There's a cute guy in the cleaning store, why don't you go in there and talk to him? I've got a ticket." I gave her, and so they did, and that's how they met and they got married. So that's the story of my family. Any questions so far? Anybody have questions so far? Okay. Now, I brought artifacts. What are artifacts? Those, yes.
Like a thing that a person has made.
Yes, and what else? A little more than that. Yeah, could you piggyback on that?
Like old objects that humans made.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be humans, I don't think. Like artifacts are something old that are like from a certain thing in history.
Okay. And most of the time, yes?
Like things that people used like back during the Holocaust and like you still have them.
That could be too. So these are my artifacts. So we all know what these are. What are these? What are these? Something you're supposed to light on Friday nights. What are these?
Candles.
What kind of candles?
Shabbat candles.
Shabbat candles. So these I brought to show you. These were my grandmother's. Okay, she brought them from Europe because she came on a boat. She was allowed to bring things. Okay, and these were my mother's. The next generation. So who can guess who these belong to?
Yours.
Yeah, they're mine. These are mine. And I was very happy on Rosh Hashanah, right, Stephen? That I lit my candles, and I had two very other close people. All the candles were lit on Rosh Hashanah. And this is a very precious thing, okay? Name that cup, what is it? Yes? It's a Kiddush cup. Now, this says 1931.
Whoa.
Okay? This is the Kiddush cup, it says 1931. Who do you think this doesn't belong to me? Yeah?
Your grandma?
Mm,
Your
no.
mother?
Yeah?
Great grandma.
No. Yeah?
Mother?
No. Kiddush cup is usually for,
Or what?
yes?
Was
Your
it?
dad?
It was my dad's. It's my dad. And it's 19, because in those days, this is the kind of Kiddush cup they gave out at a bar mitzvah in 1931. And it says on it Sally, S-A-L-L-Y.
You said 1918 he was born?
Yeah.
So
that's
31 would be bar
Yeah,
mitzvah.
that's right,
Yeah.
that's right. That 31 being called. It said Sally. And when he came, the only two things he brought from his entire, very few pictures. He had a few pictures. The only things he was allowed to bring with him was the Kiddush cup and,
A little.
yeah,
Chicken soup.
soup ladle. And the soup ladle had my grandmother's initials on it, P.H. Paula Haim. So that's, and I use this. I do use this. And this Kiddush cup, Sally, my father came here and he said his name was Sally, S-A-L-L-Y. What did people tell him? S-A-L-L-Y. That's a girl's name. So he said, I don't want to be Sally. He changed his name to Sydney. I have no paperwork that ever says he didn't go to court. He just decided that he wanted to be, he just wanted to be Sydney. So that's it. And this Kiddush cup has been at my daughter's bar mitzvah, my nephew's bar mitzvah. It's going to be at my nephew's wedding. It's going to be at my grandson's bar mitzvah in March. It's a traveling Kiddush. You heard of the traveling pants? There's a book. This is a traveling Kiddush cup. It goes to wherever we have a family event. And this, I use on holidays. Now, the only other artifacts I have, I really don't wear all this stuff, but I just wanted to show you how things get packed. The smallest, this was when I got from when I was a kid, from my grandmother. My grandfather got that for me, okay? This was my grandmother's, and you could see it opened, it's a Torah and a little ark, and it opens up, yeah. So I have given my grandson, who's going to be 12, his own Magen David for last Hanukkah. And now I decided it's time for my granddaughter to have something that she's going to have. So I got this is from an Israeli company called Aleph Bet by Paula. And that's probably why I bought it, because Paula was my grandmother. And it's, instead of the O, there's a Jewish star, yeah. And I hope that, you think she's gonna like it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's sweet. It's sweet.
It is, I think it's sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
So so I want her. So why am I telling you this story? Not because I'm a nice person and I like OJC. Why would I be telling you this story? Why is it important for you to hear this story? Why is it important? Yeah.
So that we can hear from someone who has experience.
Yeah, well, I don't have experience, okay? Okay, and anybody else? What is it that we want you to get out of being in Hebrew school and being Jewish and carrying on the traditions? What is so important? Yes.
Carry on stories.
To carry on the stories. Anybody heard of Lador Vador? From one generation to the next.
Yeah.
This is one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And that's why you're here, so that you get this in your heart. And when you have children and you grow up, you'll say, gee, I want them to have the same kind of feeling in their heart for being Jewish as I have. And they pass it on to their children. And that's how we grow and stay strong together. Yes.
Your mother's story was an easier story to tell.
Yes, it was an easy story.
Your father's story, definitely different. Did he talk much about it? Did he talk about the family that he left behind? Were there things that he was able to share?
The sad part is that I never knew he was in a concentration camp till I was about 13 years old. I had my mother talked all the time because my grandmother, she lived with us and she was a baker and she told stories, but my father didn't talk much about anything at all until we went to Toronto, to Canada, to a family event, and the two brothers were talking about being in concentration camp, and my brother was maybe 17 and I was 13. We looked at each other, we said, what are they talking about? We had no idea. But my cousins, who was my age, all grew up hearing the stories. He did not talk about it at all, at all. And my mother, every year in November, I could take out a clock. The page was coming, November 10th. She told her Crystal Knox story, whether we wanted to hear it or not. She told her story. And when she was in assisted living in Riverville, she told the story, to the group. So I feel that if I could continue to tell her story, it would make her happy. That's it. Yeah.
I have another question, and I don't know if you've experienced this. I have. My father's father was from Austria, and he made it, but his siblings, from what we knew, did not. We later, many years later, it was before my father passed, but it was like, I don't know, I think maybe if he was 86 when he passed, maybe he was 80 when he found out he had more relatives here that had come that he didn't know had made it. They just, with the advent of the internet and Facebook and all kinds of, other possibilities, found out he had relatives that had come. They were half siblings, but, it was incredible. Did your father or your uncle ever find any connections with any other relatives that had come or survived, or even neighbors that were living nearby that they then found when they came here to Canada or the United States?
Well, I know where I grew up in Washington Heights, the person around the corner had a number on her arm. Remember, people had from concentrated, and there's a myth about that. Only people who were in Auschwitz had numbers. That the rest of it, they didn't. But they all knew each other. They all knew each other's stories. And my father played soccer with a bunch of people. And the interesting story: my father was 83 and went into assisted living. And 2 years later, a woman moved in, turned out to be a girlfriend of his from the old country. And she looked at him and said, "Sally." She knew who he was, and they hadn't seen each other.
That's a movie.
And and my mother and her became really good friends. But that happened a lot. They found people. But like I said, I'm on a Facebook group with all the people I grew up with,
Which is very unusual.
which is very, and we're all different spectrums of religion. Some have no religion, some are very orthodox, some are conservative, very different political views, but we all have this connection because our parents. And when a friend of mine started dating someone, her husband died, started dating someone from Washington Heights, and we met him, and I said to him, "Where did you go to shul?" That's the first question I asked him, and I knew. I said, "Oh, you went there." So that's my story, and I hope. Thank you for listening. You were a great audience.
Do you guys have any other questions? I know I asked a few, but do you guys have any other questions?
Anybody want to see this?
Yes.
Pass it
Okay.
around if you want.
Yeah, that's very cool to
You want to
have
pass it
that.
around? I'll let you pass it around. Yeah. It's all beat up. Yeah.
It's
But
not-
that's the
I
only.
know, but it's not fragile. It's probably
It's-
silver,
it
so
is silver.
it's sturdy.
And
It's
my
okay, you can hold it.
and yeah.
It's really light.
I have another crazy story. If I,
Yeah, you
Yeah,
got a
we
few
have time.
minutes.
We have
Yeah.
time.
We don't move over until we
What?
see somebody over there.
What?
Pass that around also.
One pass it.
Look at the handle.
Look at the handle, it has initials on it. Yeah. They don't do things like this anymore, no. When my daughter was about the time my daughter was bat mitzvah, my father got a package in the mail. That time they moved to Forest Hills in Queens. Anybody know where that is? And in the package was my pictures from my great-great-grandparents. And we don't know who sent those pictures. We think it's from the people who took the house and the business. They found them in the attic. And we don't know, how would they find my father like 50 years later, 60? They found him. So I got the pictures. That was a crazy, and I have them hanging in my house. And because there were 3 brothers and I was the only niece, the rest were boys, I said, I'm keeping the originals, and I made the 3 brothers copies. So, and I had them restored.
That's so
And they're in our
precious.
house. Yeah.
Really
So,
precious.
It's so cute that it says Sally. I love it.
Yeah. All right, well
Well,
that,
thank you so, oh, we've got
yes,
a
good
question.
question.
Did people actually call your grandfather Sally?
Oh, Sally.
Sally?
Sally. No, but interestingly enough, he had a first cousin that he was very, very close to. And she passed away and left my father some money. But she left it to Sally Haim.
Oh,
And he didn't have any paperwork that he was Sally, he had no paperwork that's who he was. So the person who was doing the executor of the will got testimony from other people who were still alive that's who he was.
Can I ask a question?
Yes?
So what language did they speak when he was 13 years old? That they wrote it S-A-L-L-Y.
German.
And that's how, that's,
Sally.
so that would be like German, a German
Sally.
name.
Like Sally, S-A-L, German, yeah.
Using
So I grew up speaking German, not Yiddish, because I wanted to know what my grandmother was talking about. Yes, I did. I grew up, and all the people that I grew up with, we all understood German.
So in Germany, a lot of the Jews in Germany were very modern. And they spoke German, and they felt German, and they felt Germany was their home. And this was a horrible surprise and shock.
Well,
What
my
happened?
grandfather, who died before the war, was a Selig. And a Selig was an honored soldier because he was in World War I. And so they thought they were German and they had honored the country, yeah. My father never got over that. My mother, and I don't know if you know this, I'll tell you. In the 70s, there was a reverse birthright trip that the German government paid for my mother to go back to Frankfurt on a 2-week vacation to see.
And she went.
She went. Unfortunately, my father was paying for a grave for his father, and the cemetery wasn't really was raised.
Oh, no.
So I just want you to remember that the Jewish people survived, we will survive, and you need to keep the flame alive, keep the light alive, and that's why I come here to tell you that story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's really a wonderful speaker.
So, Marsha, your final words, actually, I wanna just, some of you may know this because you know some of the symbols. Who knows what the symbol for the conservative movement is? Oh, that means Minion's coming. You told me to set an alarm.
Oh, yeah,
I
but
know,
they're
I'm-
coming in here.
I know
so-
that, I'm just laughing because you told me to
I
set an
did.
alarm, so now an alarm goes off at 5:55, because I was late twice. Anyway, do you know what it is? They say the bush was not consumed, so it is a bush,
Burning bush.
It is a
burning
bush.
light, burning light.
okay? So it's telling you and us and all of us is we need to keep that flame going, not extinguish it, but keep it burning inside of us as a light, as a munition, of our love of our Judaism. Not to extinguish it, but to keep it alive.